talk with you today about both Propositions 5 and 10. First off, with regard to Proposition 5, as you all know, we have a housing crisis here in California, and that's largely due to a lack of supply, just not enough housing units. What Proposition 5 aims to do is make more efficient use of what we have. And in this particular case, we're targeting the empty nesters, those folks that have been in their homes for a long time, their kids have moved out, and frankly, their home doesn't really meet their needs anymore. It's too big for them, it requires maintenance that they really don't want to do, but they're very aware that if they move, they're going to incur a moving penalty in the form of increased property taxes. And that's just a function of how Prop 13 works. Prop 13 works by setting your property taxes at what you purchased the home at. And it, the assessed value can increase about 2% a year, but basically it's going to be 1% of that. So you buy a home for $250,000, your annual property tax bill is going to be $2,500. So it's that simple. But if you then go move someplace else, again, your property tax is going to be based on what you purchased that home. Unless you're a senior. Here in California, we have two propositions, Prop 60 and Prop 90. Proposition 60 allows you to move your property tax base within your county. The problem with Prop 60 is that the replacement property must be of equal or lesser value. If it's $1 more, you can't do the transfer. So let's go back to that example I used. You buy at $100,000, you sell it $250,000. If your replacement home is $255,000, you're not going to be able to do that transfer. What Prop 5 does is it takes that difference, in this instance that $5,000 difference, and adds it to the base. So in this case, you'd go up to $105,000 if you made that sort of transfer. So that's one of the things that Prop 5 is really geared at, is allowing you to make that transfer, which you cannot now do under 60. But if you do have to buy up, you're going to pay for it, but at least you'll be able to do the transfer and you'll be able to retain your Prop 13 property tax savings. We also have Proposition 90, and that allows you to move from one county to another county, but there's only 11 counties that are currently participating of the 58 counties in the state. We believe that you should be able to move anywhere in the state when you need to. Both Prop 60 and Prop 90 are one-time benefits. So if you used it at 55, and 55 is the age at which you become eligible, and your life circumstances change 30 years later, you're out of luck. People are living longer, and we need to recognize that, and as their circumstances change, they might need to move. So Prop 5 lets you move anywhere in the state, purchase a home of any price, and you can do it more than once. Now, one of the issues that the opponents are pointing to, and really it's the only issue, folks really don't have a problem with senior homeowners moving wherever they want, it's the cost. And the LAO, the Legislative Analyst's Office, tags this with an initial loss of property tax revenue. Unfortunately, what the LAO analysis doesn't reveal, and it's a function of the word limit that they're under for purposes of the ballot pamphlet, they don't disclose that they do a static analysis that only looks at property taxes. We've done a dynamic economic analysis that looks at the economic impact if Prop 5 passes. As you know, when you sell a home or you purchase a home, you hire work people to come in to paint, make repairs, whatnot. That generates sales tax and income tax. When you factor that in, there is no cost associated with Proposition 5. So it will help senior homeowners, it would help the disabled, the permanently disabled. We've had a lot of fires here in California recently, and they continue. If you live in an area in which the governor has declared a natural disaster, you'll be able to transfer your property tax base to some other part of the state. And then finally, it relates to contaminated properties also. So vote yes on Prop 5. Turning to Prop 10, which would repeal the Costa-Hawkins. And probably one of the most important things with regard to Prop 10 is that a lot of people, there's this misconception that we need to pass Prop 10 in order to have rent control. And that's not the case at all. We already have rent control in many cities throughout California. And in fact, Costa-Hawkins was modeled after the Los Angeles rent control ordinance. There are three provisions that Costa-Hawkins has. It provides for vacancy control. So in other words, if you live in a rent-controlled apartment, once that's vacated, the landlord can increase the rent to cover their costs and the like. It doesn't apply to new construction, and then finally it doesn't apply to single-family homes. These are all sort of make sense restrictions, and we believe that if you were to wipe those away, you're going to make the problem worse. As I said at the very beginning, our housing crisis is due to a lack of supply, and if we impose rent control with no limits whatsoever, that's just going to discourage the builders from continuing to not build, and so we want to avoid that. So vote no on Prop 10, and then I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. An unlimited number of times. The question was with regard to Prop 5 and how many times you can make a transfer. It's an unlimited, currently under Prop 60 and Prop 90, it's a one-time transfer. This would allow multiple transfers as the individual needs.
Just a comment, we've been doing quite a bit of work on Prop 90, which is now been moved to the ballot as Prop 5. Prop 90 would allow the tax-based transfer from one county to the next if you adopt it. Of course, if it passes statewide, then it's good in all counties. But the closest county to us is El Dorado County that has had that for now 4 years. El Dorado County, we got some stats from them, and this is just what you're talking about. It's way more than just property tax. 42% of the people who moved there and utilized their Prop 90 tax transfer base spent over $40,000 in remodeling their house, adding a room with the local contractors, and that's significant dollars. They've also found out that typically those people who might be of a retirement age, 55 and older, are philanthropic. They support the nonprofits. They volunteer for boards. They donate. So it's money that goes throughout the community, and in addition to that, sales tax stays in the county that it's purchased, that you purchase it in. So sales tax is created for the local county that way. So a lot of positive things would come out of that in terms of economics, way more than a possible reduction in property tax, which over the 4 years that El Dorado County has had that Prop 90, their overall property tax base has dropped less than 0.2%. Because what happens also is you have relatives and people coming up who aren't over 55 and buying, and they're paying Prop 13 taxes, just like we all did when we bought our homes. So
that's a very good point, that while these retirees may not have high incomes, they have very disposable incomes.
Yes.
They're not spending money on their children and whatnot. And if you look at all the Prop 90 counties, the other Prop 90 counties, they have been in from the very beginning. And I'm talking about Santa Clara, San Mateo in Northern California. You've got LA, San Diego, Ventura, Orange County, San Diego, San Bernardino, and Riverside. All of those last two are recent additions, but the ones along the coast have been a part of Prop 90 for years, and clearly they don't see any sort of revenue loss. In fact, are inviting these folks to come in and move to their county. In the back.
And how many times does a typical senior actually move after they leave that first house and go where they're going to retire?
I'm going to answer that question a little differently, but I think it gets to the same thing, which is they're not moving right now. Our research shows that almost 75% of senior homeowners have not moved in this century. In other words, they haven't moved since the year 2000. And half of them have been in their homes for a quarter of a century. They've been in their homes for 25 years. They're not moving because of the moving penalty. We think that if we eliminate that moving penalty, they will move, and then as their life circumstances change, they may move again.
I think in addition to that, also, the oldest baby boomer turned 71 years old last year. Would have retired probably 5 or 6 years ago, except the economy was on its backside, and the value of their house had gone down. Now their values have returned, maybe not 100%, but they're back up, so they can sell that house, utilize that cash to move and to live off of, as opposed to move to an area, sell their 1,100 square foot house in San Francisco for $1.8 million, come to a place like this and buy a mansion by comparison for $500,000 and have cash to live on. So I think we're going to see more of it as the front end of the baby boomers start to retire.
Yeah, the Legislative Analysis Office, when they did their analysis, said that this will, there will be tens of thousands of additional transactions that would be generated if Prop 5 passes. We sent their working papers down to one of our PhD economists down in Los Angeles, because we didn't know, did that mean 20,000, 90,000? And on average, that would be 43,000 additional transactions a year. Now, let's put that into context. In any year, in the entirety of California, there are approximately 425,000 transactions. So this would be about a 10% bump.
Increase.
And this actually raises another issue, which is the Legislative Analysis Office doesn't believe that this will encourage new building. And that their mindset is a little bit understandable when you're talking about single-family housing. It is expensive to put a shovel in the ground when you're building a single-family home. I've heard figures on the low end of between 80 and 100,000 when you're talking fees, permits, exactions. It's expensive. But this is not the type of housing that we're talking about here. These folks don't want a yard. They don't want this 2,000 square foot home. We're talking multi-family housing, and we believe the builders will respond and build this type of housing. Doesn't look like any more questions, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you.